serial killer since Jack the Ripper. I want to know what it's like to be in the presence of that kind of evil. What goes through your brain when it's close enough to feel his breath.
We both know this isn't over.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Can I get a quick show of hands? Raise your hand if you're a Terrifier fan. Excellent. Okay, now can I get a raise of hands if you have heard of the Terrifier movies? Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. Please welcome to the stage Executive Director of Acquisitions, Brandon Hill. And can we also get Chief Content Officer Yolanda Macias, please? They are both execs for Cineverse. They played an essential role in bringing Terrifier 3 to the screen, and today we're going to talk about taking an indie darling and turning it into a massive horror box office success. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
So some background here for anybody who doesn't know. This franchise started on a $35,000 shoestring budget. And was this really a niche movie that ended up really exploding. Brandon, explain to me when you came into the Terrifier franchise and how it has impacted your life.
Yeah, okay, so Terrifier 1, going back to when that was kind of making the rounds for distribution, I had caught a screener of it, and at the time, the company I was working for wouldn't have really made sense for them, but I still appreciated the film and became a fan. And so I was kind of keeping an eye on the second one, and there was a Indiegogo campaign and all of that. Skip forward a little bit to, I guess it would have been 2021, end of 2021 into early 2022, where a cut of the film was about ready to go, and it was kind of making the rounds. And one of my good friends in the business, Priscilla at the Coven, she sent over a screener, and immediately myself and Brad Miska on our Bloody Disgusting team took a look, and we were blown away. We thought it was really special, and we were kind of like, okay, how do we start the process here, because it's I'm sure it's gonna be very competitive. As it turns out, there were several people that were interested, but it wasn't studio level that was kind of coming in. It was mostly just indies. So anyhow, we had to kind of go and make a case internally, which included Yolanda and the rest of the C-suite group at Cineverse, just to kind of really show why this one made sense for us. And it can be challenging, especially when there are admittedly several people in C-suite that don't watch horror. And so we had to kind of jump in and really show why we're passionate, why myself, Brad, are really part of the community. So we're able to really talk from that perspective, but we had to also kind of show why we think this one's going to be a little bit bigger than your average film. And to be honest, at that point, while we were thinking Theatrical could be a part of this, that was kind of a smaller component at that point. It was really just we believed in this movie, we wanted to make it happen one way or another, and so that's kind of where it went.
Yeah, and so when Brandon introduced it and Brad introduced it to me, it was a $250,000 production budget. This is Terrifier 2. And we were expected, or the filmmakers expected us to pay a lot more than that. And it was kind of a big bet for us. Not a lot of cast, but a good genre. We like the genre. We believe in Brad's taste. But we had to, sell it in-house. And I remember, Cineverse does thousands of pieces of content come through, and we're a small acquisitions team. And finally, Brad and Brandon kept, whenever we were on a call, they would start talking about Terrifier 2 and about the practical effects and about Damien's vision. And finally, I was like, okay, guys, I've got to get on a call with Phil and Damien, because all you're talking about is this film. It has to be something really special here. So we spoke to them, we heard their vision, and then we saw the film. And so I am not a horror fan, but I completely appreciate a filmmaker's vision and when they really know who their fans are and they are not going to compromise. And even if they have a small budget, they're going to squeeze as much out of it as possible to bring it to the screen. And so that's what I could see. And I could see that passion come through, that we had to sell it up, and we were able to get it greenlit.
That's a great point. I mean, the extent to which you can appreciate these films as something that's really a product of incredible passion and incredible filmmaking craft. You don't have to be somebody who loves ultra-violent movies to appreciate why this movie has done well. Ultimately, though, it is about the rampage of a killer clown. If you're unfamiliar, Art the Clown, not a great guy, kind of pretty vicious. And if you watch any of these movies, you know, they take on this quality that can be really, you know, pun fully intended, terrifying. So explain to me sort of how you see the audience that this is catering to, because I think it's a more complicated group than people know. Yolanda?
Yeah, so for sure, Terrifier 1, even Terrifier 2, it delivers on the gore. You're going to get that core horror fan. You know, you guys just, every single practical effect, you know, scene, just get into it and can talk about it for 30 minutes. When I finally sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to watch this movie, you know, 20 minutes into it, I knew we have something special. And it was because, like, what girl doesn't like a smart and funny guy, even though he's terrifying? But Art the Clown was the reason that I was sold. You know, he's trained to be a stage performer. He knows how to use his body, his expressions. He doesn't say a word. You know exactly what he's thinking. You know, you think he's, you know, he's clever, he's funny, he steals every scene. And then you have Final Girl on top of that with Lauren. So those were the elements that I understood would reach a broader audience.
I've repeatedly described Art as kind of killer Buster Keaton, but Damien has said that Sienna Shaw, that final girl, is his favorite character. Brandon, can you tell me a little bit about how you think her role in the movies impacts the audience that it's drawn in?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like when we saw the second movie, it's funny because of how things played out with all of the convention circuit, seeing all the people that were dressing up as Sienna. And I will say, Damien will mention this as well, that Brad and I both, when we saw what he did with Sienna, we thought, okay, next year, next Halloween and everything, there's gonna be people dressing up as Sienna for sure. And Damien's like, oh, that'd be wild, you know. We didn't know like just how much of that was gonna kind of come true. And I think like, you know, there's something about her character. I mean, yes, a really, you know, exciting final girl, someone that goes beyond just being the traditional final girl, because there's a ton of those, but she has kind of just hit in a way that people can really relate to and kind of want to see fight against one of the most terrifying, you know, villains of all time. So you know, you are really rooting for her on both, you know, 2 and 3, and you want to see where things go, how she's going to survive, and somehow she still does. Spoiler if you haven't seen it, but you know, in any case, I think it's a lot of that, but also like it's interesting to see how many you know, children, frankly, were also kind of, you know, sparking to her character. I mean, even we were talking a little bit about this with back at Citrus, where there's a video online with a young girl, 10 years old or so, yeah, just who was just crying as soon as she saw Lauren, who's playing Sienna. Just kind of lost her mind over it, and it's just like this is such a unique situation where we're kind of stepping beyond just a, you know, normal film with a, I guess, traditional final girl.
She's super vulnerable.
Yeah.
Sienna has a very vulnerable, she talks about mental illness. So I think a lot of people can relate to her, her relationship with her father, the death of her parents. There's a lot going on.
There is this kind of surprising amount of love around these movies, but there is, I mean, there's also, you know, the reality of it walking in the footsteps of things like Exorcist, when you have people throwing up at these movies, walking out of these movies. What do you make of that when you're doing the marketing?
We love it.
Yeah, we love it. Honestly, like, I know Brad and I had a lot of conversations initially with 2 where we were like, how, you know, you don't want to have those things happen where we're like creating it, so to speak. And you can ask anyone on our team. It's like we didn't. In Terrifier 2, we did not create that. We didn't have like send out someone to go vomit. Like that didn't happen. It was very much organic. And then when we saw
The
it
vomit,
happening,
you mean?
Well, I mean, literally, yeah. And as soon as that started happening, we're like, oh my God, we have something here. We did actually. This is kind of wild. We actually took, as soon as we started seeing this on Twitter, we were literally sending this to everyone. So like Daily Sun, all those like even rags out there, we're just sending the video to just to see if it would click, and it did. And then people would pick it up, and it was like, oh my God, so and so vomited at this theater, and there's vomit on vomit, and like it broke out and went crazy. So,
Yeah, and it became like a challenge
it
for
did.
both Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3. How long can you sit through this movie without getting sick? Love, like a marketer's dream.
You told me something backstage a little bit about a paramedic that I would like to hear about.
Well, again, we don't try to fabricate any of this. It's if it happens, it happens. But we did put a couple of EMTs out there in case somebody needed the help and the support.
For Terrifier 3, yeah.
We talk about that authenticity. You've brought up Brad a lot from Bloody Disgusting. And obviously, Bloody Disgusting is a subsidiary of Cineverse. Talk to me a little bit about that authenticity and about finding really kind of the best horror journalists and the best horror fans online to really start stumping for this movie, because it's, created such a buzz, in the real world, but also online.
Yeah. I mean, with Brad and really the whole group at Bloody Disgusting, it's really the same editorial team that's been there for a little while. And when Cineverse acquired Bloody Disgusting, we knew we had I've been a fan of Bloody Disgusting for years and years, and so besides working for Fangoria myself for a little bit, I knew those two were like really top of the cream of the crop, if you will. And so with Bloody Disgusting, it's like we're tapping directly into the audience for this movie. Obviously, we need to find ways to go beyond that, but it also it's a pivotal piece for the Terrifier franchise, and for there's a reason why studios and independent alike come to us to Bloody Disgusting specifically to advertise on all their films, buy the marketing packages, etc. Because there's a direct line into the audience, and they know that they're going to get their money's worth, so to speak. So
Yeah, let me just clarify that if you don't know Bloody Disgusting, it's an editorial online site. So it's very neutral, and it's available to anyone that is marketing to this audience, because they have a straight communication to horror fans, and they speak to them in a very authentic way. So all the studios usually put aside some media spend that will go against to Bloody Disgusting to reach the audience for most horror films. We're lucky because that actually was a reason why we were able to market the film Terrifier 2 and 3 in a very efficient way, was because we got to tap into Bloody Disgusting. And we also purchased a company called Screenbox during the pandemic, and that's a subscription horror site. And so together we were able to really widely reach horror fans and not charge ourselves and not charge the filmmaker.
I've, in conversation, I think I've referred to Cineverse as the most powerful Venn diagram in horror, and I stand by that, in no small part, right? Because David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown and has been so complimented for this performance, he's going on to do something kind of killer with Screambox pretty soon, right? He's catching on to the Disney IP of it all, and he's going to end up playing Steamboat Willie. Am I right about that?
So Screenbox technically not involved, but we are very friendly with that team, and we are doing something with them on the side that's not that. But there are some other things going on for sure, and they're a great group to keep working with. So
with this film, obviously you're dealing with a lot of different headwinds in terms of the culture, but this was also an interesting year for horror in terms of what's come out. Tell me a little bit about sort of sorting out the release date with this. When did you want the film to land? And there's a Christmas movie that's coming out in October, so tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah,
do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start because you had a very clear point of view. So release dates on theatrically is critical. So you need to kind of look at the calendar. Studios are doing this a year in advance. They're determining who's coming out and when and where they're going to go up against. We're an independent, so we're like kind of figuring it out. And I think in some ways that's good because we're doing things in an authentic, organic way, not formulaic. And so we were looking at the dates and we said, well, okay, we have a horror film, but it takes place during Christmas. So this is, it's during a holiday, during the Christmas, not during Halloween. Are we going to confuse people because a lot of the imagery will be of him in a Santa hat, right? So art has a Santa hat on. Or is it going to be confusing? Also, most people said, well, let's go in October. Joker's coming out. Smile 2 is coming out. We had one weekend where maybe we wouldn't get knocked out, but a lot of things happened in our direction, in our favor. But for a long time, it was maybe early December or where we landed, which was October 11th. You have thoughts?
Yeah, and well, I definitely fought against the December release heavily, along with the November release, and part of it with October. So we had a couple. The end of October slot with Venom, and then we had the one right after Joker. My thinking was going back to Terrifier 2. We did have sort of this like perfect storm, so to speak, with Smile 1 had come out end of September, I believe, and then we had Halloween Ends that was also there. Now, of course, we didn't know Halloween Ends was not going to perform the way it did, but it worked out very well in our favor. And then going to the third, it was kind of like, well, okay, yeah, we have Joker 2. I didn't know how that was going to perform necessarily, but I kind of felt like there's a big enough audience that's going to want to see Terrifier that has nothing to do with Joker. It's a very different kind of film. And then we found out it was a musical. It was like, all right, it's kind of obvious. And then it's like, yeah, we have Smile 2, but we've gone up against Smile before, and we were doing very well with Terrifier 2. So it was like, I think we're okay here.
So to brag a little, so that weekend that we came out, opening weekend, we were the #1 film in the nation. So.
Which again, just to snap it into focus, you're talking about something, it's revolutionary in terms of independent filmmaking. This kind of trajectory for a franchise hasn't happened before. It was $35,000 to make what was ultimately really a grindhouse film in the first Terrifier. Watching Damien go through this, watching his film explode, what has that been like for you guys as partners?
I mean, he's awesome. Like it was kind of funny because three was a real pressure cooker. I mean, like the second movie, first of all, he had a lot more time to kind of get it all together. He didn't have, frankly, us kind of like around to oversee it initially. Whereas this one, it's like we had a release date to hit ultimately, and we had other things that were kind of going on. This is a much bigger scale film for one thing. And so, Damien's turnaround time was pretty intense. He delivered the script that was pretty, not the final script, but around October 2023 is where we got the script in. And then, by November, December is where pre-pro started. And then it was off to the races in January for production. So it was very intense. And yet, he kept it all together. He was not losing his mind over everything. He was very, and in fact, even when we got to the point of the release, in opening weekend, he was just like excited for it to be released. He wasn't even like really necessarily going, oh man, I hope it makes all this money. It was not like that at all. He was very, very humble about it. And the opening weekend as it was going, I was sitting there texting with him and Brad, et cetera, and we're just like, oh my God, what's happening? It was kind of amazing to watch that first weekend just go well beyond what we had even anticipated.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, we definitely had that feeling on Terrifier 2 where we thought it was really meant to be a 2-3 day theatrical release. It was an event release. And then suddenly it started performing really well in theaters. Exhibitors were like, we want to extend this. So we just kept pushing it out. And it went like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. So now we knew what we had in our hands. And back to Phil and Damien's credit, because they're so focused on making sure that they bring something that delivers and honors their fans, we as a distributor felt we needed to do the same thing. We needed to honor their vision and bring it into the way that we spoke to their fans in the marketing campaign.
And I'll extend that question to members of the cast. I mean, there's been this ongoing kind of realization that both David Howard Thornton and Lauren Levera are incredible talents and kind of exploding maybe outside the genre. What has it been like to work with them exploring this audience, but then also exploring that huge boost in their visibility?
Yeah, I mean, well, at least for, like, yeah, we weren't as directly involved with them as much on the production end compared to like Damien and whatnot, but it is still like we knew what their value was, and we knew that as they were starting to do more projects, of course, that's going to just keep rising. And now it's like, okay, I mean, Lauren and David are both getting huge offers on big films, and I'll also tell you, like, between Terrifier 2 and 3, they both, like, getting them locked in for 3 was not easy at all. Like, Damien could talk a lot more about that, but guaranteed, it's like it was not an easy negotiations. Of course, agents, managers, all of them get involved, and it gets kind of complicated. And you can only imagine what the next one's going to be like. So I can't. It's a nightmare for Damien and Phil. Good luck.
But they've been great in
Yeah.
terms of publicity.
I was going to say
helping
on the
our
trail.
Yeah.
marketing campaign, right? So
Yeah.
they've always, made themselves available. I mean, David just can't get to everywhere. So I don't know if you knew this, but on Halloween evening, Art the Clown rang the bell for the NASDAQ closing. So we may have had to bring an actor in to do that.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that kind of incredible viral moment of this little girl hugging Lauren at Sitges Film Festival, which, if you're not familiar, that's the world's the world's oldest genre film festival. It's in Spain annually. Kids and their relationship to this movie and their relationship to Christmas it's become controversial. And I am curious to know, both in terms of the way that kids are represented in the movie and then the way that kids react around the movie. What do you make of that? I mean, there are some really young fans that really like Terrifier, and then there are also, young actors who are in it, and that's created its own sort of sense of controversy. So how do you navigate that on your end?
We stayed away from
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I'll be honest, like, when the script for 3 came in, and I'm sorry if you have not seen it yet, but there are some deaths with children that are involved. So just shocker, yes, but like, it was also, when the script came in, it was kind of like reading down the page, not quite sure how to let our C-suite know that was going to be a thing that we would have to be concerned about. Which
You had to tell Yolanda.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm sitting there reading on a plane and like, oh my God, this is insane. But like, Damien did a really good job of handling it, and I knew, like, visually we could trust that it was going to push it just the right way. He did the same thing on the second. Of course, there were some concerns about even like the scene, the dream sequence with Art with a gun and all that. So there's stuff that was discussed, of course, but at the end of the day, it's like, Damien knows what he has. We don't want to touch that. It's his film, his vision, all of that. But
Well, this is why it's unrated, right?
Yeah.
It's unrated. Studios would not take a film that's unrated. We're independent, so we get to do take these risks. But Damien knows how to shoot where, no pun intended, but you don't actually see children dying. So they do, but you're not. It doesn't need to be that way, and he stays out. He does have boundaries.
Well, and
it's not a Serbian film, I think is what we're getting at.
well, I was going to say, though, but especially in independent films, right? Like,
Yeah.
controversy can really help with marketing, right? Like, it's a huge part of why it's kind of exciting when somebody throws up at your movie, right? Like, that's part of the horror genre. How do you square that, though, then, with having such a wide audience and having, evidently, parents who take their kids to see these movies?
I mean, I'm a parent. That's kind of I'm not going to tell anyone how to parent their kids, but it's intense. And, I was speaking earlier about, I grew up, I went and saw The Exorcist when, I was 10. So I turned out okay, I think. I don't know. We did not run with that like we did with the vomiting and the getting sick, and used it as part of the viral campaign. That we just kind of let it sit. We love the fact that young kids see Sienna as someone to look up to, someone that's fighting evil, someone that is vulnerable. We love all that.
Yeah, agreed.
With the future of the franchise, I mean, obviously it just keeps getting bigger. The budget keeps getting bigger, and the time frame, they get more time to make these movies as you can kind of see them coming down the pike. What are your hopes, as you look towards the next couple of installments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of waiting to see what Damien wants to do personally, because I knew a little bit of where he wants to head, and you can kind of, if you've seen the third movie again, like towards the end, there is a bit of a cliffhanger of sorts. So you have a idea of where it's going to go. I'm just really excited to see ultimately what he does with it. I would love him to kind of continue in sort of the Nightmare on Elm Street vibe that I think he's kind of heading in. So anyway, that's
I mean, as a distributor, we'd love to see number 10, number 12.
Totally.
We'd love to see that.
And to your point, like in space or whatever.
Yeah, I was saying backstage, I do think we should send Art the Clown to space.
Yeah, I'm sure Damien's taking all those ideas. He has publicly said that he has one more in him, maybe two.
Yeah.
So
We'll
there.
see. Yep.
With the incredible success of these movies, it's not to be understated that this is a big theatrical release, but there is also the experience of people who are enjoying it at home. Talk to me about working with Iconic Releasing, and I was really intrigued. Earlier you mentioned something about working with them on Terrifier 2 and then choosing to work with them again on Terrifier 3 for releasing. So talk to me about that on streaming.
So we're not, we don't have a theatrical arm. So when we decided we're going to do this wide, we had already used Iconic, and they're known for event releasing, but they did it so well for Terrifier 2, as I mentioned. It performed so well that we just continue to roll it forward. That we thought, okay, well, we should consider them, but we considered others as well. And I think in the end, it just, we knew we could work with them. Brandon, and I have a relationship with one of the leads in exhibitor relations, and we ultimately chose to work with them, and we've been really pleased with, how well they've coordinated with us. They've taken exhibitor marketing to a different level, to the studio level, and worked very closely with our marketing team.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Iconic, they also, going back to Terrifier 2, it's like they're a new company at that point, and Fathom, of course, had been doing several releases, including like Jeepers Creepers Reborn and some other stuff. So they maybe had more of the track record, but at the end of the day, Iconic, we really they saw what we saw. They were very passionate about it, and it ended up being the right partnership for this movie. So. I think everyone would agree that they did a really good job, and we tried to make this as big as you can from an independent standpoint. And we somehow, on the third movie, I think really kind of took it to that next level collectively. So,
speaking as a non-horror fan and as a hardcore horror fan, what would you say is the biggest misconception about the Terrifier franchise? What is it that people maybe don't understand about these movies if they haven't seen them and they only understand them by word of mouth?
I think for me, actually, it's kind of comes down to people assuming, not necessarily seeing the movie, but they hear, oh my God, it's the goriest thing ever, and that's all they think that is part of the franchise, when in reality, especially as we're getting into the second and third movie, there's a lot more story there. There's, again, going back to the Sienna character, there's a lot to follow. And I think we talked a little bit about this as well. It's like, I look at the Saw franchise where, there is a lot of gore, of course, but there's also this procedural element. There's also melodrama, et cetera, that you get kind of hooked into.
It's about the FBI. People don't talk about that.
I mean, really. And I think with Terrifier, it's kind of the same way. I think there's a lot more to it than just the practical effects and blood. Of course, that stuff's awesome and it hooks you in if you're a hardcore horror fan. But again, there's just other elements, I think, that are kind of part of it that, at least to me, are kind of misunderstood sometimes. And fortunately, I think going into the third one, though, it has started to show that there's a lot more legs here than just the gore. So.
Yeah, for sure. We wouldn't be here if it was strictly a gore, slasher, kill-only film. It does, it's my job to understand storytelling and to make sure that we're bringing in strong stories and characters, and to see to have the vision that this can grow and has legs, and we can see further installments. And that's what I saw in Terrifier, and I think that's what the audience and the fans are seeing, that it's far more complicated than just the kills.
Yeah, there's an archangel, there's a magical sword. Everybody should watch these movies. I firmly believe that. What would you say for Cineverse has been the biggest takeaway from the success that is Terrifier, this kind of revolutionary moment, and by extension, what can we learn from it as a filmmaking community?
I think a lot of it comes back to just standing by the filmmaker, and really, really kind of keeping to being the true partner for them. I mean, Damien could have gone a million different directions with who he partnered with, especially with 3 after 2 success. Like, there's a lot of people knocking on the door, but at the end of the day, he trusted us, and we came in and made sure his vision was there. He got to have his final cut and all of that, and we just were there to support him and make sure it was elevated from there on our end for distribution. So,
I'll add to that, and this is about Cineverse's contribution to this experience, is that we know horror and we proved it. And we have internal assets. So we bought Screenbox, they're there, that audience is there, we're bringing them a lot of content. We have Bloody Disgusting, who editorially is there to support. We have podcasts that are in horror. We have a full 360. They're our own assets, our own organic. We have 30 channels that we can cross-promote. So we utilized all of that in order to market in a very effective and efficient manner that I don't think anyone else can do it in this industry.
Well, we are firmly into October, so happy belated Halloween, merry early Christmas, and long live Sienna Shaw. Thank you, Yolanda and Brendan.
Thank you.
thank you.